pick up the dandruff.
How's that? 226 are you on?
Yep.
Right. How are we doing with the coffee? I think looks okay to me. Okay, running here. You happy, David?
Yep.
Okay. Is everything switched off? It's
Yeah.
supposed to be switched off?
Yeah, I mean, we've still got that thumping away, but
At least it's constant, isn't it?
Yeah, it is constant, yeah.
Okay.
This is 226, slate 226. Thank you.
Right, Danny. How did you get involved with Dickie Pride?
Well, when I was signing up with Larry Parnes, which never happened eventually, but he thought I was going to sign with him. And we went out on a few of the Larry Parnes tours, and Dickie Pride was also on those packages. And also I was on the Jack Good Wham show, which was, Dickie Pride was on all of those as well.
What was he like then? He's got
Well,
a bit of a wild reputation.
Yeah, reputations always kind of went before them. And when you saw Dickie, you always felt as if you had to be careful what you said or did, because he was more of a jazz type of singer, and pretty rock and roll singers weren't his favourite people.
When you pretty rock and roll.
Well, you know, you get a bit of a reputation before as well, and the old jazz musicians and singers, they used to look upon the Quiff Boys, you know, as not being all that, you know, in the business or even talented.
So, I mean, was he regarded as a kind of a better singer than average then?
Definitely. I mean, his voice range and the way he phrased his songs, I mean, he was definitely advanced, which jazz does for you, you know. With rock and roll, it's pretty basic. And we all taught ourselves in the bathroom with a record in the background, you know.
But he wasn't, he wasn't singing jazz with Parnes, was he?
No, he wasn't. I mean, I don't know who Dickie was with prior to Parnes, but I only met him through the Larry Parnes days. And there was one night we went out, we stayed at the hotel together, and we had an all-night pool session. And he got to know me a bit better, and I think he half accepted me after that evening session.
And what was he like on the stage?
Electric. I mean, just to watch him, everyone was mesmerised when they saw Dickie. Everyone used to come in the wings and watch him. I mean, he used to vibrate when he sang. He was like a blur in some numbers. It was amazing energy there. He used to do slipping and the sliding, and he started doing the shoulders and that, and he just, you know, just amazing thing to watch. In those days, you know, these kind of things you wouldn't see visually.
So he wasn't doing the standard Elvis moves then?
Definitely not. You know, he wasn't stereotyped at all. He picked his own numbers, and he liked the clever type of pop song, if you like. But, I mean, even the songs he did had jazz orientation.
He also had a reputation of being a bit of a fighter, a kind of, not your normal, I mean, you say pretty boy, but I mean...
Yeah, well, he was volatile. I mean, short fuse. He wouldn't take fools gladly, and if anything upset him, he used to tell the world about it. And there's many a time I've heard and seen once where he actually dived off the stage and punched somebody. And they might have said something obscure, or lip-read him and just went down and give him the treatment, you know. So I think everyone respected him after that, you know.
He was only a little geezer, though,
very small, but wily, you know. It's a bit like if you go in a pub, there's a small Scotsman in there. You don't mess with them, do you? You know what I mean? You don't go by size and physique, you know. The big ones are the softest.
And what about, how did you get on with Parnes? Because, I mean, again, he wasn't your normal kind of Parnes.
Well, I'm sure Larry had his hands full with him. I mean, he would put his foot down, Dickie, and there's no way that Larry could try and manipulate him too much. It had to go along with Dickie's way of doing things, you know. That's the impression I get, anyway.
Well, he got rid of him, too, after a while.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I can see them having a bust-up.
Yeah, so you said you'd see him, or you heard about that he'd offered to punch people out on the stage and stuff. So, what was he like backstage?
Well, no, he wasn't. I mean, we mustn't kind of... he wasn't going around looking to beat up people. He just, if people upset him, he used to, you know, he responded to that. I mean, it wasn't... He got on with some people like Duffy Power. He got on well with it. A lot of the Parnes estate. I'm sure they would tell you that he was a friendly, nice fella, you know. He wasn't volatile all the time. You just have these moments that people pick up and tell you about. And then you get an image of being a violent person, but I'm sure Dickie wasn't like that, you know.
He's very musical.
It was easy to get a reputation in those days, you know. One story escalates like a gunslinger, you know.
Didn't suffer falls.
That's right, definitely not.
And I suppose on the palm shows, I mean, well, he had to put up the palms himself. That must have been frustrating.
Well, exactly.
What about the actual touring? I mean, that must have been ridiculous.
Well, on the touring side, you know, I mean, we enjoyed it then because we were all working class boys. And when we used to travel around the country doing different venues with people applauding or screaming, you know, it was a great thrill for us because we all had ordinary, mundane jobs normally, so this was a new world for us, you know. So we didn't look at the bad side of touring like they say today, up and down the country, and it's exhausting. We enjoyed it. You know, it was a new world. And the money never came into it. And we just enjoyed doing the music and getting the adoration.
Because you never had any money.
We didn't, we didn't get the adoration or the money anyway, so we didn't know the difference. But I mean, the money was better, of course, because average wages were like £6-7 a week. And we were getting like £50, £100 a show. That's big money in them days.
Right. And what about, I mean, I was going on to something else now. I mean, did Parnes ever come down and watch the show?
Yeah, Parnes was always around. He kept an eye on all his singers, and he was good that way. He watched his artists, and he did a lot on the production side, and he did take care of his artists. I mean, he charged lots for it, but you did get some attention.
But he didn't obviously take care of Dickie in a way.
No, he had his favourites. You know, I mean, the thing is, if you've got a stable, you're going to have your favourites, obviously. And some of the others probably don't get the full attention. But you disagree with that. I mean, I don't know what was going on in Larry's mind, but you can't spread yourself through 12 singers and give equal kind of attention to them, you know.
Well, people were aware that Dickie was taking drugs, or was he taking drugs in those early days?
I don't think anyone thought we took drugs in those days. They probably thought that the music did it for us. And it did to a large degree, but of course there was a few alien substances that helped us along. in my case, it was just scotch.
Well, that's probably safer.
I thought, yeah, I was old-fashioned, you know. So I wasn't into the drug scene. But I had a few drinks, not too many. You lost it anyway when you went on stage. You sobered up straight away because it was frightening. The fear sobered you up if you were over.
It really was it?
Hmm?
It was frightening.
Very frightening. Imagine going in out there, not, you know, it's a new, as I say, a new world. The music, the people, and if you're getting screams and everything, you don't understand it.
Of course, you were only about 17, 18 at the time.
That's right. Well, I was 18. I was born in 42, and I started about 1960, and it was the first. I dived in straight away on the top. I didn't do an apprenticeship, and I wish I'd have had a few more years' experience beforehand, you know.
But no one did they? They always rapid.
Well, that's true. I mean, when Larry used to discover you, you were straight into it. You were straight into TV with Jack Good. You did the tours with the top names, and you had to learn quickly because you didn't have time to do an apprenticeship, really.
Of course, people forget. When you said you were on the Scotch and everything, I mean, you weren't allowed to drink Scotch and beer until you were 21. Were you?
Well, I didn't. I mean, when I did a gig in North Wales, I had to drive to another county to get half a bottle of whiskey. They didn't sell it on the Sundays in Flintshire or wherever it was. So, you know, I mean, yeah. I mean, when we were in the Isle of Man, we did a summer season, we were drinking the 80s Wine Lodge. You know, the old Australian plunk. It was just to make you feel more relaxed, really. So when you went out there, you felt good, and you could produce what you thought was a good show, you know.
Did you ever see Dickie at the end of his career after the past days?
No, not at all. We didn't mix socially. I mean, it was only in the studio and on the road. I mean, most of us only met each other on the road in them days, either the service station on the motorway or behind stage, you know. We didn't really socialise. The gigs were a social event for us, and then after that we just went home and lived our normal lives.
Right. Leaving Dickie now for a
Yeah.
minute, I mean, unless there's something else that
Well, the only thing I've got to say with Dickie, I was doing the one of the Jack Good Wham shows. I was doing a song called Stuck on You. And there's a middle eight there, team of wilder horses couldn't tear us apart. And I used to bum the notes. And they did a few takes on it, and it wasn't improving. It got more strangulated. And so Jack dubbed Dickie Pride's voice in to hit that top note. So when you saw the show, Team of Wilder Horses Couldn't Tear Us Apart, the Tear Us Apart, Dickie was singing.
He seems to have done that with quite a lot of people.
Yeah, well, he had the voice, you see. I mean, to him it was easy. I mean, it wasn't even a hard note, really. It was just the nerves with me. And I was, you know, you imagine Lord Rockinham's 11, all the Vernon's girls and singers watching you. At 18, I was petrified. And it just got worse, and Dickie just did it easily. It was easy for him.
And nothing seemed to petrify him anyway. So.
No, that's right.
Of course, he was the only one who could read music, too.
You see what I mean? You know, I'm sure he had more experience. I don't know when he started, Dickie, but when he was doing the Wham shows, you could see the experience which was there.
No, he was a choir boy.
There you go. Well, there you go. He would know all about top C's then. I should have been a choir boy.
Well, you had the looks, though.
Yeah, they said that, the hair, he looks like this, he looks like that. It was always Cliff and Elvis you compared to in them days. Jack Good liked the look, obviously, with his camera angles. And he put me on the Wham show straight away.
What about Joe Meek? I mean, because thinking about John Layton, I mean, your story and his must have been fairly similar. What was it like working for Joe Meek in those days?
What was it like working for him?
You hear all these stories about you have to see it.
Well, Joe always went for in those days, the prettier singers. And he always said that he could get anyone who looked good with a very mediocre voice and make them famous. Which doesn't say a lot for me, really, does it? But the thing was, he did that because he was very proud of his recording techniques. And he just knew he could master anybody and make them sound good. And I think, to be fair, I mean, you can't say Cliff Nett's got a bad voice, Mike Berry, they got good voices. So it was a generalisation that all the singers couldn't sing. But he felt as if he could make anyone a star with his recording techniques.
Well, he did. I mean, he used to paint pictures with music, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. And he
what
used
about
to
actually recording? Because I mean, in that house of his, I mean, you hear all these.
Well, the house was, I mean, that was just a luggage shop. And you went up a few flights of stairs. We used to record in the second room, a second floor front room. And you had all these musicians squashed in there, and you're looking out the window virtually over Holloway Road, singing these songs, you know. And to me, it was like doing a rehearsal. I didn't feel as if I was making a record there. And then when you heard the playbacks and the finished product, you couldn't believe the sound. It was just like it was done in a studio, EMI Studios, you know. Some people say better. He had the technique to do it.
I mean, and you never got put in. I mean, there's these stories about putting you in the toilet and in the bathroom.
Yeah, well, Echo, he liked Echo, and mind you, I think because of shortage of space, I think he had some of the string musicians down the staircase, and he had vocal backing singers all over the place. I mean, if you had the leads and the microphones, it didn't matter where they were put, really. And you could have put some in the attic. Singing down the toilet pan, you get like an Elvis Presley Echo, you know.
But I mean, actually, it was unusual, wasn't it? 'Cause, I mean, most people, I mean, you actually went into a studio and sang it live, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah,
He was using overdubs and God knows.
Yeah, he was. I mean, you didn't know how the record was going to turn out. You'd speed it up, compress it, put loads of echo. And there was a lot of people who recorded there that were very I think Humphrey Littleton was well disappointed with Penny Blues, or one of those songs that he distorted it completely. And, of course, jazz musicians wouldn't want that. But Joe had his way of doing things, and it went down good for some things and not so good for others.
It worked okay for John Layton.
Well, John Layton fans, I mean, when you listen to those records, the quality, you know, and the backing, especially Margaret Stredder, I mean, beautiful sounds there, and it sounds like a studio record, doesn't it?
Well, it's not like at all, is it?
No, not at all.
Maybe our press.
I mean, there's people now still recording, you know, songs that they're still inspired by Joe Meek's music. And Jeff Goddard you got to give a lot of credit to as well, for his songwriting abilities. And John had some good 2 hits, Wild Wind and Johnny Remember Me. Everyone knows those songs. Great sound.
They were the real big hits.
Yeah,
Big too, weren't they,
it's the same kind of rhythm as Telstar and that, but you know, it was a good rhythm.
Actually,
Yeah.
isn't it?
You listen to it, it's the same rhythm, isn't it? He liked that rhythm.
What
Well,
about?
I'm fighting the air conditioning now. We've got another motor started up. So
Are we?
yeah.
Oh, there's a buzz, is there?
I think
Yeah,
it's going a bit low as well.
Is it?
So,
I'm
yeah.
probably syncing with the voice, am I?
Go in a bit closer.
Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll be doing a Phil
It's not you. Dan.
Phil Mitchell whispering down the microphone. All right to move, is it?
Just a second. I'm all right.
I mean, it was against the law. Wasn't it?
Yeah, of course
I mean,
it
they
was.
hadn't come out. I mean, if anyone had it was front page local newspaper stuff, wasn't it? Gays those days.
And what you got to remember is, us kids in those days, we didn't know much about homosexuality either. You know, we were green on that one. If you didn't learn it in the Boy Scouts, you wouldn't know about it.
Yeah. But I mean, in fact, rock and roll in those days. I mean, it's not just Larry, is it? I mean, there was Joseph Lockwood,
Oh, there was loads.
Stigwood.
Yeah, Stigwood was famous, you know.
And,
I mean, Larry Parnes took me to... What's
Go in
happening?
tight, don't worry.
Huh?
Go in tight.
We're running, Paul. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go on.
And of course, what was it? Larry Parnes took me to see an impresario called Jaime Zal. I don't know if you remember his name.
Terry Dean.
Was it Terry Dean, was it? And I took my father to his flat in Piccadilly. And it was like a harem, you know, went in there, pink carpets, the whole bit, all scented. And Dad's sitting there asking for half of Tetley's or whatever it was, and he sent this boy out to get it, and he came in with a trolley, you know, and a pink apron. And he was serving us drinks, and my old man thought, this is definitely not for you, son. He didn't like it at all, because he was a country boy, my father, from Yorkshire, and very Victorian.
So did Larry
Yeah.
kind of try it up with you? You know,
Well, Larry, yeah, I mean...
everybody once, didn't he?
You know, when Larry said we were going up to Manchester for the Eddie Cochran tour to do an audition for Jack Good, he said, come down my place in Marble Arch and we'll get a train from Euston. And, of course, when I got there, he said he's got a business meeting and we'd have to stay at his place for the night. So, you know, we had a few drinks in his flat. And he showed me the bedroom. And I went and got in the bed, and there's all this steam, you know, the shower's going, and all these scented aromas coming through. And the next minute, he jumps into the bed. And, of course, straight away, even though you're not too streetwise, which I wasn't, definitely, you get a bit nervous with it. I've never slept with a man before since I was a kid, you know what I mean? And
Just change the shot to me.
I don't think that...
Imagine the scenario.
Anyway,
you were saying, yeah,
and the classic is, like, through the night, you can feel like movements, and he's getting closer and closer. You can hear the breath down, coming closer and closer. And I'm edging towards the edge of the bed, like nervous reaction. And I tell you the amazing thing, don't tell me if it's forethought or it was destiny, but because I was nervous of the situation, I got between the sheet and the blanket. And unless there was any moth holes, I was safe. And anyway, I ended up on the carpet because I knew he was getting too close and he was starting to touch. And we said, we must talk about the future, Danny, you know. So eventually I slept on the couch. But we still went up to Manchester the next day, and of course he didn't say a lot that day. A bit subdued, and we stayed at is it the Midland in Manchester? The big hotel. And we had this suite, you know, 2 single beds. But I thought, well, that's all right, I'm safe tonight. And as soon as we got in there, he pushes the 2 beds together, and he's tying the legs together with ties or whatever, you know. And so there's 2 beds stuck together, because we must talk about the future, Danny. And anyway, he wants me then, because he's got these, like, lights, adjustable lights there, and he wants me to put these trousers on without any underpants, and he wants to trying to get some camera angle to see if it's a good profile. And because I was getting very nervous by now, I thought, I only want to sing rock and roll songs. I don't want to prance around with no underpants. So it just goes on and on, and of course I tell Dad when I get back home, I tell my father about that, and he said, I don't want you in the business if this is what it means. He said, if you either make it on your own ability or forget about it.
Surprised
You know.
it's not written into the contract.
Yeah, well, yeah, 60% of what?
But the contract itself, actually.
I suppose he
Signed your
probably
life.
said no underpants because he was buying the clothes at the time, eh? Save on the Y fronts.
I can't imagine Dickie going through this stuff.
No, I can't. I mean, Dickie probably would have given him a smack, you know. I mean, I think Larry knew that anyway. He probably thought, because he wanted to call me Danny Abel, which I thought was a bit kind of patronising. And so did my father, and I didn't like that name either. He probably thought I was capable. But I didn't like the name anyway. You know, it didn't have that ring, does it? You know, Danny Abel sounds a bit meek, doesn't it?
I mean, because it was kind of the whole circle at the time. I mean, and then you go across to Joe.
Yeah, I mean...
But you said he kept his professional and private life separate.
Yeah. I mean, the trouble is when you get these impresarios with, or Svengalis they used to call them, with reputations, they just assume that everyone that's with them is homosexual. But you must remember, Larry wants to make money first and foremost. The rest comes as an accessory. So he wasn't too bothered whether you were keen or not, as long as he could make some money out of you. And he was looking for talent. I mean, we mustn't run away from he was looking for rock and roll singers with talent who could make him money and make a name for themselves as well, you know. So we mustn't get sidetracked with the sex bit.
It is funny.
Yeah, it is funny that, I mean, people like to hear it, you know, but...
But the thing is, remember, in those days, it was against the law, it was a different kind
yeah,
of...
I mean, it was rampant, but it's the same old thing in them days. You know, everything was, you know, behind curtains, wasn't it? It was all closed up, and it was still going on. It was still very prevalent, but there was no publicity about it.
Was everybody comparing notes about it on the bus?
No, we weren't. No, I mean, I think...
Everybody must have been through the
because
same thing.
I thought it was embarrassing for me, and we never talked about it really because it was embarrassing. And we should have done really, because we weren't so open in those days, you know, like sex was a bit private. It's not like it is today, and we just we didn't talk about those things. Just the music, and that filled our lives.
Because it was music was everything for you.
Well, for me, definitely. I mean, I started very early. I used to go to working men's clubs around London with a guitarist from school, and we used to sing numbers when there was a trad jazz or a skiffle thing going on. And I used to do like rock and roll songs and go around with a hat for money. That was my initiation.
Were you down the Two Eyes then as well?
I went down the Two Eyes as a spectator, but not as a performer. It was a bit before my time. That was like late 50s. And we used to squash in there and watch Terry Dean and Vince Taylor and drink Cokes, you know. It was a place to go, really. There wasn't many places to go for rock and roll. That's where all those influences come across, you know. You see people and you think, I want to be that person. It was a dream.
And what about that? I mean, your dad said that he didn't want you to sign the contract. I mean, the contract,
Yeah, well,
I mean,
yeah.
It's literally signing your life away, isn't it?
See, my father even was so embarrassed about talking about these situations that he said to Larry that he thought that Larry wanted to concentrate on Billy Fury, and he couldn't spend the time to take care of my business interests or my showbiz career. So we never signed. I mean, I must be one of the few singers that refused to sign. They were all chasing Larry Parnes in them days. And I've still got the contract unsigned. And we never signed. I never signed with Larry Parnes. But I've got to give him his credit. He did put me on the Jack Good Wham show. I went to Manchester, met Eddie Cochran, Gene Vincent. And Jack Good signed me up for the Wham shows. Without Larry, that wouldn't have happened. So, you know, he was a powerful man.
Yeah. He was. Well, Jack Good doesn't rate him at all.
No, well, I can imagine that as well, because two opposites, you see. I mean, Jack Good never signed anyone up, did he? I mean, to him it was the art, wasn't it? You know, the television production. He wasn't thinking of signing people up and taking 60%. He just loved the music as well, which is why I like Jack. He did it for the art and not just the money, you know.
That's what he said.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
They would try and tell him how to do his job.
Yeah, well, that's right. We're two different trains of thought there, you know.
What about Such? I mean,
Another massive episode there with David Such. I mean, I worked with Such in the early 60s. He goes back a long way, and I did see him a few times at Joe Meek's. And he was always mad, you know. I mean, again, in the 60s, we did a show in Stevenage, open-air concert. He took me up in the van with the Savages. And he stopped the van. We all thought he wanted to have a piss in the bushes. And he gets in the gutter and he goes up there on all fours, barking at a bus queue. And I'm thinking, who is this fella here? You know, what's it all about? Their faces was, if you could have filmed it, it would have been a classic. You know, he was just outrageous. He used to run through Woolworths, waving knickers, screaming and shouting. People thought, you know, let's lock him up for Christ's sake, you know. But he broke all the barriers, you know, and people loved him for that. The first punk rocker name, wasn't he? When you think about it, yeah.
Heavy metal.
Yeah.
First punk.
And
The ones wear outrageous clothes.
Yeah, I mean, he was he must have been influenced by Screaming Jay Hawkins or whatever it was. He must have had an influence there. You know, I'm sure there was an American counterpart.
Who else has ever heard of Screaming Jay Hawkins? I mean, certainly in those days.
Well, we did in them days because we always bought obscure American records, and if it was a bit outrageous or rock and roll, we used to buy it and find out about it. But people in this country didn't know about him. But in the grapevine of the showbiz, you know, people used to say, you must get a Screaming Jay Hawkins LP. And we used to buy it and listen to it, you know. I suppose we were looking for influences from abroad, you know.
He also had some great bands, didn't he? People, I mean, they've been
Great musician. I mean, yeah, unbelievable. He's had everyone imaginable. He keeps name-dropping all these musicians, you know, and he worked with some great people. They all loved him, I think, for what it certainly wasn't for the voice. But his music and his style on stage, they loved it. The outrageousness, I think it was. The rebelliousness, you know, they loved it. And it was good rock and roll as well. I mean, it was all classic rock and roll stuff.
And he was really the only one doing that, wasn't he? I mean,
yeah, I mean, you know,
before Beatles.
When I was with at Such's funeral, you know, and I was in the service, and you know, they're doing the service, and then they put Roll Over Beethoven and Chuck Berry. They actually played the record in the church, which echoed around, and it was so sad that I really cried when it happened. First time I heard rock and roll in the church, and the first time it kind of epitomised Dave Such, you know, because that was his song. It was a sad moment.
Were you surprised when he killed himself?
Very surprised. We met him 2 weeks before. We went to Pete Newman's 60th birthday do in Aylesbury. And he gave us a lift back to South Harrow where we got another cab. And he seemed okay, you know. I mean, we did hear that he had depressive spells, but when you saw him, you never thought of that. And he always survived the business and survived all the pitfalls of life. I was really shocked when he finished it. You know, I just can't imagine what brought that on, you know. And everyone was shocked, really.
Do you think he's been really underrated? I mean, because people kind of think of him purely for the Rooney Party, but...
Yeah, I think... I mean, when you think of the longevity of his career and the records he did with Joe Meek and the politics, and he was always there, wasn't he? I mean, he's shaking John Major's hand. You know, how many people can achieve that? You know, some by-election or whatever. And he was always there, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was there with Elvis.
And all these mad, you know, like kind of things that the Looney Party represented were so funny as well. And we need humour in politics, don't we?
You know, in music too, I think.
You know, well, definitely, yeah, and he was doing that as well. I mean, the props he used, you know, and with a sabre. In fact, I've got a tape of the Lewisham concert. You see him there in full form with the sabre, and he always had lots of people on stage as well with him, like dressed up as doctors and whatever, the establishment so-called, and you could see the mockery that was going on. It was great. Yeah, I like Dave very much. I mean, one on what was his birthday do at Greenford? His 50th birthday. And he's on stage doing Jack the Ripper, and he's like, "Come over, Danny." And I just walked in. He gets me up on stage, and he gives me the microphone, and ends up in the dressing room. So halfway through Jack the Ripper, I'm standing there like a plonker, thinking what the words are for Jack the Ripper, you know. And Jet Harris was sitting there looking at me like I was on drugs or something, you know. But that was what Dave used to do. He used to put you in it as well. He was a great practical joker.
Everybody says you went on stage with him. You always you make sure you've got to get out first.
Definitely, yeah. You had to be prepared for Dave, and I never was, you know. But I mean, that was the fun. Didn't worry me looking stupid for a whatever. No, it was good fun. Man.
So what did Joe Meek think of him? Because
Well, I thought. Well, same again with Joe. I think he thought, with all these madcap ideas and the sounds that it suited Dave Such, Joe Meek's kind of sound systems, and that he could bring in screams and all sorts of noises that Joe used to like to create, and anything to do with black magic or horror. Anything that was a bit eerie, Joe used to be fascinated with. So Dave Such was tailor-made for him. Just getting sound effects.
good.
Okay, got that?
Okay. So much to you, Paul, or to camera?
No, to me.
Okay.
Yeah, don't forget
All right.
what I'm going to do is, first of all, just kind of go back to the Skiffle days and the two eyes. And
Yeah.
Just to
talk a bit
identify.
about that.
Okay,
Put
all
the
right.
thing in context.
Yeah.
Slate 228 interview with Vince Eager. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay, Dave?
Yep.
All right. Definitely his face is a bit dark. I'm a bit more on that.
Is it the tan?
He's a bit tan, isn't he? Yeah, a bit more.
We often wondered about his parents.